those who have fled the country because of the continuing violence. It's a very strong letter. It's not often that the UK and France act together, but clearly both of them have been slightly ahead of their European counterparts when it came to demanding action in Libya, and they feel perhaps that this is the best way to push forward with their agenda.
Well, France and the UK clearly, as you say, slightly ahead of their European colleagues, but even further ahead, I guess, than the United States. It appears that these two European countries are leading the way at the moment.
Well, certainly in the letter they say that they would like to see a number of measures to end the violence, and that would include possibly, they say, a no-fly zone. The reality is the no-fly zone will not happen unless America agrees to it, because it's going to have to be carried out by NATO, as we've seen in the last few hours, because NATO say that they won't take any action unless there's a United Nations resolution. That is clearly Obama forcing that because he doesn't want to take action anywhere in the Middle East unless he has the legitimacy of a UN resolution behind him. So Cameron and Sarkozy clearly going to try and convince their European counterparts to get behind that idea and the measures that they are talking about, including supporting an arms embargo. At the same time, they're going to have to take their argument further afield to the likes of the United States, to Russia and to China in the UN Security Council. Remember, France and the UK, both permanent members of that, to try and convince them that they have to take some sort of action if they want to see the removal of Colonel Gaddafi, who they say in the letter the regime has lost its legitimacy.
Right, Alan Fisher there live for us in Brussels. Thanks very much. Busy day for Alan. Earlier, he was at a NATO defence ministers meeting in Brussels. The organisation confirmed it will now send its warships closer to the Libyan coastline. It is in response to the persistent violence across the country. Now, on the topic of that no-fly zone, officials said they would need a United Nations mandate and strong Arab support.
NATO is not about to go it alone. Call from member nations for a no-fly zone in Libya have been getting louder. But the organisation's Secretary-General says three principles must be met before NATO can take action.
Firstly, there has to be demonstrable need for NATO action. Secondly, there has to be a clear legal basis. And thirdly, there has to be firm regional support.
The Americans want a United Nations resolution. The Russians want details of how a no-fly zone would work. Others just want some information.
It's always a difficult subject. I'm waiting to hear what will be said today. I don't have any preconceived ideas.
NATO would take the lead in any action to cripple Colonel Gaddafi's air defences and air force. But NATO and European politicians want support from the African Union and other Middle East countries, because the last thing they want is this to be seen as Western military action against an Arab nation.
We do not want to get sucked into a war in North Africa. We want to have freedom, we want to support peace, and therefore we have to decide careful and wise. And this means we always should think about the end of the development which starts now.
Military experts say they could have a no-fly zone above Libya up and running in 2 to 3 days. The politicians are the ones who first have to give the green light.
Now, Libyan state television is claiming the 3 Dutch Marines who were captured during a rescue mission are to be handed over to Maltese and Greek delegates. Those claims were made on screen over a television report on the channel AlJazeera. The Marines were captured in northern Libya on the 27th of February in a failed attempt to evacuate 2 civilians by a Navy helicopter. Well, we can speak now to Carl Stanio Navarra, who is in Valletta in Malta for us. And Carl, what more do we know about this possible release of the Marines?
Well, Felicity, the release is supposed to be happening as we speak, as a Greek military aircraft, a C-130, has just landed in Tripoli a few minutes ago, and it's carrying the Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs from the Greek Republic, Demetrios Doulis. Now, Demetrios Doulis this morning has met with an envoy from Gaddafi's regime, and they discussed the release of these 3 crewmen. Now, there was a build-up to this meeting because yesterday another envoy from Gaddafi, one who traveled on the 3 jets which flew across Europe on diplomatic missions, also landed in Malta. Mohammed Taher Siala, who is the Undersecretary for Cooperation in Libya, has met the Maltese Prime Minister Lawrence Gonzi, and they also discussed the release of the 3 Dutch crewmen. This came also as a consequence of another visit in Malta by the main Dutch envoy regarding the release of these 3 men, who is Ed Kronenberg, a very well-respected diplomat in the Netherlands, and he was in charge of this mission, and he was based in Malta to negotiate with the Libyans the eventual release of these 3 crewmen, who include a woman pilot. Now, these 3 Dutch are said to be being handed over to Maltese and Greek diplomats in Tripoli, and they are expected to fly to Athens tonight and then being transferred again to Eindhoven in the Netherlands later tomorrow in the morning. So therefore we have an escalation of another diplomatic event with regards to Libya, who seems to be opening up to the Western world and releasing these 3 people who have been accused of entering Libya without permission whilst they were performing a humanitarian evacuation of 2 European nationals in the city of Sirte. Felicity?
All right, Carl Stanio Navarro with the latest there on the possible release of those 3 Marines. Thanks so much, and we'll keep an eye on that story for you, obviously. Now, the US president's top intelligence chief says the longer the conflict in Libya drags on, the more likely it is that Muammar Gaddafi's forces could prevail. For more on that, we can join Jane Dutton. She's on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Jane.
Thank you for that, Felicity. A few hours ago, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper told a congressional committee that the Libyan leader has superior weapons and the ability to replenish his forces. But that was disputed by the National Security Advisor just a short while ago. In comments made to reporters, Tom Donnellan said, quote, that change is the order of the day in the Middle East. Patty Culhane has the latest.
If the rebels in Libya were looking for reassurance as they fight for their lives and freedom, they got the exact opposite from Washington, as the man in charge of all U.S. intelligence agencies forecasted their eventual defeat and a Gaddafi victory.
I think over the longer term that the regime will prevail.
James Clapper told Congress because Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's forces have superior weapons and logistical capabilities, at best, rebels could hope for a stalemate, an outcome the U.S. doesn't want to see. But officials have also made it clear that the U.S. won't be the only country taking steps to prevent that.
I am one of those who believes that absent international authorization, the United States acting alone would be stepping into a situation whose consequences are unforeseeable. And I know that's the way our military feels. It's easy for people to say, do this, do that, and then they turn and say, okay, U.S., go do it. You use your assets, you use your, men and women, you get out there and do it, and you take the consequences if something bad happened.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, for the first time, downplaying the potential effectiveness of a no-fly zone, saying it failed to stop the violence in Iraq or Kosovo. The U.S. instead is focusing on diplomatic moves, cutting ties with the Libyan embassy, and Clinton is planning to meet with Libyan opposition leaders next week.
Are still engaged in the process of assessing those groups, the council, and other individuals to find out what their vision is, who they represent, what their